Good morning and welcome to today's First Pork Academy session, Protecting Pork's Freedom to Operate Through We Care. My name is Michael Resendez.
And I'm Bianca Metello.
And we are part of the Real Pork Scholars program. Once again, my name is Michael Resendez, a master's student in the Department of Animal Science at Texas A&M University, working under swine extension specialist, Dr. Jeff Wiegert. My graduate school project is related to assisting niche and small market pig producers around the state of Texas develop enhanced biosecurity plans, secure pork supply plans, and encourage the usage of readily available resources such as AgView and the RAB app. I spent the last year of my academic career working with the National Pork Board, Texas Pork Producers, and Texas Animal Health Commission, learning the process of setting up an effective, secure pork supply plan, and will spend the next year of my master's program working with producers, show pig exhibitors around the state, and ag teachers to implement their own biosecurity and traceability plans. I'm extremely passionate about the show pig industry and about my project because I believe FAD and ASF preparedness could be the difference in a lot of people's business success or failure. Thanks for having us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bianca, and I'm from Texas Tech University. And again, we are part of the 2024 Real Pork Scholars and are proud members. So I am a master's student studying swine welfare at Texas Tech University under Dr. Aviles Rosa. And my research aims to evaluate the effect of weaning age on physiological, behavioral, and performance indicators of welfare in weaned piglets. I discovered my interest in swine welfare while working at my undergraduate university's swine unit, where I became captivated by the science and policies that drive the farm management protocols currently in our global commercial swine industries, some of which have been newly introduced and some of which are rooted in generations of tradition. As someone who has grown up with the joy of listening to my grandfather tell stories of raising show pigs in the 1950s, and now has the privilege of telling him stories of raising pigs myself, I am truly passionate about my research. Welfare research allows us to gain a more holistic understanding of the pigs we raise and provides information that can not only benefit the life experience of the pig, but the success of the producer. As demonstrated by We Care, the U.S. pork industry is committed to the continuous improvement of animal well-being. As a representative of this industry, my biggest goal for my research is that it can be used to educate consumers on our current industry practices, and that it can provide producers with insight on key production and welfare indicators that can support production decision-making on wean age. Thank you very much for having me. So thank you all again for joining us, and it's time to meet our moderator, Paul Ayers. Paul brings 15 years of experience with the Mash-Offs, a leading Illinois-based operation with approximately 130,000 sows and sites across 5 states. Paul leads foreign animal disease preparedness and traceability efforts through participation in industry programs, including the U.S. Swine Health Improvement Plan, the Secure Pork Supply, AgView, and RAB app. His extensive industry leadership includes serving on multiple National Pork Board committees, including Animal Welfare Advisory Groups, Sustainability, and Depopulation Task Force, a decade of Operation Main Street advocacy work, and the Illinois Pork Producers Association's Producer Services Committee. Welcome, Paul, and thank you very much for being here.
All right, good morning. How is everyone? Let's see if I can figure technology out here. Well, thank you. We are really excited to have several speakers sharing how the National Pork Board and our partners are working to protect pork producers' freedom to operate through the We Care principles. First, though, we need to take a moment to review the antitrust statement. I'm sure everybody wants to read this at 8 a.m. in the morning, but we'll take a minute or two. Okay. Thank you. Let's meet our speakers. First up, we have Dr. Heather Fowler. Dr. Fowler is the Director of Producer and Public Health for the National Pork Board. She oversees education, outreach, and research for public health and worker safety, and health in the swine industry. Welcome, Dr. Fowler. Next, we have Stephanie Wetter. Stephanie is the Director of Animal Care for the National Pork Board. In this role, she advances science-based animal care practices and engages producers that have need resources to provide the best possible welfare for their pigs. Next, we have Dr. Frank Mitlerner. Dr. Mitlerner is a professor and air quality specialist in cooperative extension in the Department of Animal Science at UC Davis. He is also director of the CLEAR Center, which leverages research and science communications to help animal agriculture further stewardship efforts. Lastly, we have Lauren Servick. Lauren is the Public Policy and Sustainability Director at Minnesota Pork Board. She works to build connections and relationships with opinion leaders, regulators, and elected officials to foster trust in Minnesota pig farmers. Thank you all for being here, and we'll get things started with Dr. Fowler.
So I am actually going to start my presentation with a question. Show of hands, who's familiar with the One Health approach? Okay, quite a few of you. What if I told you it's very similar to the We Care ethical principles? Who's familiar with the We Care ethical principles? Okay, even more. Right, so when we think about One Health, for those that are not familiar, we're referring to the connections between human health, animal health, and environmental health. And within that approach, we recognize, because of those areas being connected, it's important to take a holistic approach, looking at all those areas simultaneously. And I would argue our producers, when they got together in the early 2000s and formulated the We Care ethical principles, you had those same thoughts in mind, right? As we think about producing safe, nutritious pork that allows you to be good stewards of the environment, to prioritize animal health and well-being, worker safety, your community, your neighbors, to be a good neighbor, you have to look at those things simultaneously, right? So my very first takeaway today is know that take credit for what you're already doing, that you are working in a One Health way through those We Care ethical principles. To drive that home, full disclosure, I stole this from Stephanie a couple years back, when she was presenting on animal housing, humane animal handling, and herd health. But what I see as a One Health champion is One Health in practice. Okay, so again, take credit for what you're already doing. When you're out on farms, either as a veterinarian, a farm worker, a farmer, producer, you are working in a One Health way because you're implementing those We Care ethical principles. That animal housing environment where you work is also your worker safety and health environment. You're being a good neighbor through your practices. You're prioritizing the health and well-being of the animals, the people, and the environment in which you work. So again, take credit for what you're already doing. And I can tell you that at the National Pork Board, as we think about our commitment to doing what's right for people, pigs, and planet, we're working in that same way. Now, your question may be, so then how do we make sure we're continuously improving simultaneously across those 6 We Care ethical principles? I'll give you an example from my area in public health, and then I'll pass it on to Stephanie where she can tell you give you an update on some of the work in the animal welfare space. I can tell you in public health, a lot of times my topics will overlap with Stephanie in animal welfare, overlap with environmental health, which can make it really, really complex, which means we often have to take a multifaceted or multi-step approach. I will give you an example here from the environmental and public health space and walk you through these steps. First, we need to understand what the existing research is. We then need to identify the gaps, work to fill those gaps, work with partners like the CLEAR Center, our communications department, state associations to make sure we're translating that science into sound bites, and then continue to collaborate with you producers as we work to understand next steps and prioritize our needs in this given area. So using that environmental public health example, there's no shortage of literature out there that tries to identify health outcomes tied to living near or around farms. These are just 4 examples, but I'm sure you're familiar with some of the papers that may have come out of your state or directly target your production. If you're in North Carolina, I can say there's been a number of studies that look specifically at North Carolina and hog production. Sometimes in this space, there's an emphasis on a state, and it covers all animal ag, but there are times where it calls out hog production specifically. But in this area, we recognize it's important not just focus on one paper. We need to understand what the entire body of work says. So we've worked with researchers to create a database, a living review or a living database that collects all the new papers that come in and creates a summary of those findings, recognizing we need to see what the entire body of work says. And by doing that, we can come up with talking points that are defensible as we're engaging our stakeholders. So it all starts here. So another talking point or note I want you to take home with you is the SYREF website. And I always have to read the slide because I forget what the acronym stands for. So SYREAF.org, Systematic Reviews for Animals in Food. We've partnered with researchers to create, again, this online database. So it starts here on this website, navigate to Living Review at the top of the page, and then it'll take you to a page where it provides a menu, a navigation menu on your left-hand side here, right? That column on the left, that dark gray column there. I encourage you to check out the background and the tutorial. It'll explain why the database exists and give you some pointers on how to navigate it. Now, I will point out it's a highly technical resource, so feel free to reach out to either myself or the researchers that created it if you need any help navigating it, but also keep that in mind as you interface with stakeholders that might be interested in this data. Now, this database does a great job of highlighting when the different studies have been published up to the present time, which is indicated by that red line there. And as I mentioned, it's living, right? So instead of publishing a report that is immediately obsolete once a new paper comes out, it can continually review the existing papers and add to it. So that timeline will be updated with time. It also shows where the studies are being published. And you can see here the majority are coming out of the United States, followed by countries in Europe. Now, this is the most important slide. Let's see if the animation works. Okay, perfect. As I mentioned before, not just focusing on one paper, but the entire body of work. So to orient you here, that dotted line is your statistical significance. So if the estimate, which is the dot in those lines that extend on either end, I call those whiskers, cross over that line, it says it's not statistically significant, meaning the results could have been found as a result of chance, right? There's a chance that this association was identified. So you want to make sure you don't interpret those findings or take that into consideration when you interpret those findings, right? Oftentimes in scientific publications, if it's not statistically significant, it's not even reported as significant or substantial at all. So what you should notice as that animation moves forward is very few of those estimates, or I should say, let me phrase it the other way, the overwhelming majority of those estimates cross that line. Sure, there are a few, right? But the overwhelming majority cross that line. So it helps us think, okay, well, what does that really mean then if they're finding health outcomes, but a lot of those findings aren't significant. So it really helps inform our work and the research that we should do moving forward. And it also helps us develop talking points to defend the industry. So one of the things that we found working with these researchers was the majority of the studies on that database looked at the airways. They looked at diseases that impact the lungs, the windpipe, the nose, so odor, asthma, COPD, those types of things, which can then inform which our next step should be. When we think of air quality, water quality, soil quality, what are some research opportunities or projects that we can sponsor to better inform or to better improve our understanding in these spaces and help us continuously improve and become better neighbors in those areas. As I mentioned earlier, it also can help us develop talking points that can help you guys translate those science into sound bites as you interact with your colleagues and partners and stakeholders. And that's something that we do by partnering with Clear Center, right? They have a very long history of doing that work, working with our state associations, and even internally, looking at you, Becky, to our comms partners within the National Pork Board. So we're really taking a collaborative approach to make sure that we're meeting your needs. So definitely continue to push us if we give you talking points and say, this audience is really focused on this, so that we can continuously improve. Lastly, as we think about those next steps of, okay, we have this research, we have the sound bites, what's next? That's where we really involve you as producers, right? We have a number of task forces, working groups, strike teams, whatever you want to call them, right? Where we pull you in with the assistance of our state associations to help us understand what are those issues that continue to pop up, or maybe the issue is starting to change and morph slightly, or the question is different now. It helps inform the research that we're doing and we're funding, and then we can partner with those academic partners to help, again, continuously in that multi-stepped approach address the issues that you're facing. With that said, I know I threw a lot at you in this very short amount of time. With that said, I do want to make sure that as we think about working in a One Health way, we think about we care, people, pigs, and planet, humans, animals, and environment. You are an important part of that. And without you, there would be no industry. So I want to make sure that you're taking time as we talk about freedom to operate. You can feel like you're on the defense all the time, and I get it. Just know that you're not there alone, that you have us at the National Pork Board, you have the We Care team, we have Jamie Burr, our leader, myself, Stephanie, others who are not represented here today to support you. We've also worked to collate some resources. That link will actually take you to the American Farm Bureau Federation, or AFBF's website, and their resources on mental health to make sure you're just taking time to check in with yourself, with others in the industry, protecting your families, because this is a marathon, guys. It is not a sprint. So continue to stay engaged. We'll continue to work in a One Health way, continue to take credit for the work that you're already doing, and reach out and let us know how we can help. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Fowler. Next, we have Stephanie Wetter. They'll be giving us an update on Pork Board animal care and welfare programs.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you, Dr. Fowler, for your overview of that One Health approach and how we're working on producers' behalf in the areas of protecting our people, protecting our animals, and the environment, all under that sustainability umbrella. Today, I want to talk to you guys about future-readying our facilities and doing a deep dive into farrowing housing research and how are we tackling that in the areas of science. My goal today is to help you as producers understand the research that we're funding here at National Pork Board and to give you confidence in the work that we're doing on your behalf to work for your freedom to operate. The goal of our research here on farrowing housing is not to identify what is the farrowing housing that we should support, what is the housing type that we should reject, what is the right or the wrong type of housing. We're here to look at farrowing housing strategically to help us understand how can we tackle this topic in a way that's going to make us flexible and give us the freedom of choice as producers in this topic in the face of potential scrutiny. Specifically, I want to talk to you all today about farrowing housing research project that National Pork Board is looking to fund here at the end of this year as a way to continue to protect your freedom to operate in your operations. So, I'm sure your first question is, why are we talking about farrowing housing and why are we talking about it now? First of all, we know that there is global pressure on the use of farrowing crates around the world, and this pressure is increasing. We know that generally the U.S. follows global trends. We've seen this in instances on issues like farrowing stalls and antibiotic use. And we know that we have a need for proactive producer-driven response. So we see global pressure on the use of farrowing crates or farrowing stalls. In the EU, other countries like Austria, Germany, Sweden, Switzerland, Norway, we already have bans on farrowing stalls or restrictions on the use of farrowing crates in these countries. The UK right now is heavy in this discussion on the use of farrowing stalls. And talking with the UK DEFRA, which is the UK's version of USDA, the use of farrowing stalls is their #1 animal welfare issue that they're tackling today, and that is across all species. So that's cattle, that's horses, that's poultry, that's everything. This is their #1 animal welfare issue that they're working on right now. They are heavy in this debate. The large animal veterinarians, their swine veterinarians, their National Pork Association, and the animal welfare groups that they have partnered with are all working together towards this ban. And I would not be surprised if we see an announcement on the ban of the use of farrowing stalls in the UK any day now. We continue to see the discussion on the ban of farrowing stalls increasing in other countries, so Canada, New Zealand, and now increasingly in the United States. Traditionally, we know that the U.S. follows suit in issues like this that we see change first in Europe and then in other countries. Certainly, we've seen changes like that come in areas of gestation stalls, traceability efforts, and antibiotic use. Typically, about 5 to 10 years after these changes occur in Europe, we start to see them here. We're starting to hear them now in the questions that we're getting in our supply chain. And through all of this, we know that to tackle this and to get ahead of this issue early, we need to have a proactive producer-driven response on this topic. So why should you care about this topic now? So I'm going to first direct you to the image on the screen. You can see here we've got a picture of a sow in a stall. And the text on this says, "I can't move." It says, "Pregnant pigs don't belong in cages," in the Barnyard Birthing Center at the Oklahoma State Fair. This is a recent image that was used less than a year ago to talk about movement against the use of gestation stalls and farrowing stalls at the Oklahoma State Fair. This one image is just part of a much larger attack on the use of this housing at the Oklahoma State Fair. So including a larger attack on social media, in-person protests at the state fair targeting specifically the farrowing stalls that were at the birthing center, and signs that were placed all around town targeting this specifically. This was both at the Oklahoma State Fair and the Tulsa State Fair, so this was pretty wide. And I would not be surprised at all if we don't see more protests specifically on this again this year. So we know that this public campaign is already here and already targeting animal housing. So we need to work together to get ahead of this issue. This gives us as producers an opportunity to lead and not react, right? This is the time that we need to get ahead of this conversation. We all here as producers, we all understand the work that we do every day in animal welfare, how to raise our animals humanely. I don't need to tell you about the good work that you're doing every day in this space, but we do need to talk about production and the work that we're doing more broadly. So now is the time to lead in this discussion. And so that's what I want to talk to you about today, is the work that National Pork Board is doing to lead that discussion around farrowing housing. Specifically, I want to talk to you about the 5-year farrowing housing research plan that the National Pork Board is embarking on here later this year. The end of 2025, fall of this year, we're expected to release an RFP, a request for proposals, for research to tackle this issue specifically, and then research that would go on for the next 5 years. We're budgeting this at $250,000 every year for the next 5 years. We know that this information can't wait 5 years to get back to our producers as we're having these conversations today. So we're going to have annual updates for our producers. They can have this information as it becomes available and continue to use it in their discussions. We know that we need a producer-led research consortium to guide this. So we're going to have producers available to continue to set the goals and monitor this research as it is continuing out into the industry. So what's going to be evaluated specifically in this program, and why is it so important? Certainly, we're going to look at areas like animal welfare. So areas of animal welfare we're going to target. We're going to look at things like sow mortality, piglet mortality. Sow behavior is one of the main questions of concern that we have around farrowing housing in general. But we're not going to forget other metrics like production metrics, because of course these are a business and we have to tackle those as well. Our economics. So help us understand across different types of farrowing housing that we're going to look at. The economics is an important part. It's not just about the build and the initial cost of this, but there's other areas in this as well. If you're a retrofit, if you're looking to remodel, what are these costs? But then over time, what are the maintenance costs associated with different types of production? The facility infrastructure, understanding it's not just about the pen, but it's going to impact other areas within the farm as well. Housing is going to be infected, ventilation is going to be impacted, climate control, et cetera. As Dr. Fowler clearly laid out, our One Health approach means that the areas we're working in are not in a vacuum. We know that labor is going to be impacted on these changes as well. So how do changes in farrowing housing impact areas like labor efficiency? How does it impact areas like worker safety, worker flow? Because what looks good on paper may not always fit well in our barns and in our systems. But also, what is our environmental impact for the different types of farrowing housing that we'll be looking at? There could potentially be changes on things like environmental footprint, emissions, et cetera, in each one of these. What it comes down to is at the end of this project, our goal is to have a side-by-side comparison of the different farrowing housing options that are going to be available to our producers and list out the pros and cons of each one of those ahead of time. So by the time the discussion, the conversation comes to our producers on the question of farrowing housing, they can lead with data, they can lead with understanding, and not be behind the question, behind the ball like we were with some of these other issues. So as we've gone through this project and what it's going to mean and what it's going to do, I want to have a couple points to you on what this means to, again, to your freedom to operate. We know that we are going to anticipate policy and market shifts, and we're leading with data on this, the credible, defensible data to be able to support these decisions and get ahead of these policy shifts. We're going to preserve our housing choice with our producers and making sure that they are in the lead of this discussion and not behind. We're creating this defensible, credible data, so by the time the question comes to us, be it through legislators, be it through our supply chain, to the public, we can talk to them not with opinions, but with the science. We're going to strengthen trust across with our stakeholders because now we have the option with this data to talk with transparency about the reasons that we've made the housing choices. And we're also going to keep producers in control throughout this entire process, from the initial goal setting of this research project to the continued management of the research as it flows through. We're keeping our producers in mind because we want to make sure that the data that comes out of this project is going to be relevant and important to your operation. So that's why I wanted to share with you all today about the work that National Pork Board is doing for you producers on your behalf in this important upcoming topic in the area of animal welfare. We want to offer the opportunity to hear your questions. We want your involvement. We want your inquiries on this and want to continue to work with you as we continue down through this project. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. Certainly appreciate the proactive work that you and others at Pork Board are doing on that issue. Next, we have the clicker will advance. Okay, Dr. Frank Mitlerner with an update from Clear Center at UC Davis.
Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm not by myself. There are quite a few people from UC Davis. Raise your hands if you are. So please say hi to everybody. It's not the first time I'm here, but I continue to be really excited about working with the pork industry. We strongly believe in working collaboratively on advancing sustainability, not just research, but also communications. And I just want to highlight a couple of main points here that result from the work that we do. My father passed away 5 years ago. And before he did, he said to me a sentence I will never forget. He said to me, Frank, do good things and talk about them. Do good things and talk about them. What did he mean? He meant do the work that a professor does. Publish papers, train students, do all of that. But don't forget to talk about it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we all too often do forget. We do good things and then we shut up. And we shouldn't. Because there's a growing number of people out there in the real world who is interested in what we do and how we do it. And it is important for us to keep our permission to operate, to share that information, So do good things and talk about them is more than just a little saying that I learned from my father. It has become extremely important to all the work that we do at the Clear Center. The research we do is as important as the communication that results from it. Okay? So I have with me here is our staff, our comm staff, a director for communication, Joe Proudman. We have social media expertise, we have writing expertise, filmmaking expertise, and we have that because that is the Achilles heel of animal agriculture, the lack of fact-based communication. We are doing it, and the National Pork Board is one of the leading organizations doing it across the barnyard, but we have definitely understood the importance of that at the University of California, I assure you that. Sometimes people are hesitant when they hear words such as sustainability. Many farmers think it's part of some campaign against them, but it really shouldn't be viewed as such. In fact, sustainability is much the same as stewardship is. And most farmers, I think, would agree that they are the best steward of their land, of the water on their land, of their soil, the best steward of things such as animal welfare and health, the best steward of the product quality and safety, the best steward of their workers, and the best steward of the financial resources. These, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, are the 5 pillars of sustainability, and they are the 5 pillars of stewardship. And for those of you who hesitate to use the term sustainability, I have news. Some part of society use that term, people in cities. Other parts of society in the countryside call it stewardship. It is the same thing. And you should not be afraid of it, you should own it. It's yours, it's your legacy. And I mean that. We Care is more than just a motto. It is a lifestyle. It is your legacy. And it is ours too, because we believe in these principles as being absolutely vital to the livelihood of the sector, and that's not just pork, but it's everything. Today I'll talk a little bit about greenhouse gases because it remains to be an important topic, which will in the future continue to be an important topic, but we should not be too myopic on it. Other things such as reactive nitrogen will in the next few years be at least as important. But allow me just a few slides. This is a slide showing all the different sectors throughout the world contribute to greenhouse gases. Okay, that's global. In the US, the numbers are different, but globally, fossil fuel use is the number one. But you can see agriculture is a significant contributor to greenhouse gases. The focus will not go away. So for us to take this thing by the horns and continue to do so will remain being important. If you see a slide like this, you will see that the main focus when it comes to greenhouse gases and the resulting warming to our planet is not on pigs, but it's on ruminant livestock. But pigs do produce some greenhouse gases, namely from the animal manure storage. And we have found ways of reducing it. Really quickly, some global aspect around sustainability. This slide here shows where in the world we have human population growth and how much. And you can see Southeast Asia is growing human population by the year 2050, around 40%. Africa is the hotspot. Many African countries, if I were to depict that in color, would light up in red, and every red-looking country would be one that doubles its population every decade. Every decade. Think about that for a second. The Americas are relatively stable. Europe will slightly shrink, but throughout our lifetimes, human population on this planet will have tripled. When I was a little boy, there were 3 billion people. Today, there are 8. By the time I'm an old man, there will be over 9 billion people on this planet. We will have tripled human population without tripling the natural resources to feed these people. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is at the helm of sustainability. How do we master that challenge of producing 3 times more food in our lifetime without ruining all natural resources? And guess what? We in this room are world class in taking on that challenge. And so are the beef and so are the dairy industry in this country. And we have been so quiet around it, and that needs to stop. This is called the 2050 challenge. producing enough food for a tripling of the world population. This here is a slide, one of my favorite slides. It shows the world from space and a circle over Southeast Asia. And inside this circle, you find more people than outside this circle. So clearly there are hotspots throughout the world with respect to food security, a very important market for the US in the years to come. And there are others. People tell me, well, shouldn't we just, in order to reduce the carbon footprint and other environmental pressures, shouldn't we just simply change what we eat and eat more plant-based foods instead of animal-sourced foods such as meat, dairy, eggs? Well, I have news for those people. They might think that way in their ivory towers, but in reality, throughout the world, the demand and the consumption of animal-sourced foods is increasing. And this here is a slide showing it by region. It is increasing. Even in Europe, where we see most depression of animal-sourced foods, even their levels are constant and not going down. Plant-based alternatives will not replace animal-sourced foods, like was predicted a few years ago, but animal-sourced foods will remain strong. You see here a slide from what I call the ground zero of veganism, vegetarianism, the United Kingdom. And even in a place like the United Kingdom, the food choices of the different groups of eaters, from omnivores to vegetarians, vegans, flexitarians, pescatarians, are stable. They are not what mainstream media suggests to us, which is that there's a wave of veganism, vegetarianism happening. It is not happening. A few years ago, that was different. But now it's not happening. In 98% of all refrigerators in this country, you find animal-sourced foods such as meat, dairy, and eggs. 98%. And that should make you feel pretty bullish, if I may say so. Because the vast majority of the people who live here like what you do. But they do want to be assured that you care as much as they do. How can we in animal agriculture reduce emissions? Anybody in the world is talking about it, all the way up to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. And the FAO has put out a landmark report. And I really want to get your attention to it, because many people in animal agriculture have not seen it, and I believe they should. That report highlights what we can do, not just nationally, but internationally, to minimize the environmental footprint of livestock. This is the QR code that will get you to this report. The media, the world media, praised this report before it was released, saying this is the world's mightiest agency on food and agriculture, talking about what we can do to minimize the environmental footprint of livestock. And then the media said, this report will say that people in developed countries should change what they eat to go away from animal-sourced foods to plant-based foods. That's what the media said. When this report was released, I was present. It was in Dubai at the COP28 meeting. And I couldn't believe what I read in the media, because when I worked with the FAO in Rome, I heard them say very different things than what the media reported they would say in this report. And so I held my breath, expecting to see something different from the actual report than what I heard in the media. And no surprise, it was different. Let me lead you through the most important graph of that report. It shows on the left side greenhouse gas emissions from livestock pretty much today. And the second column shows additional greenhouse gas emissions from global livestock added by the year 2050. The third one shows the total greenhouse gas emissions that will happen if we do business as usual, if we don't mitigate greenhouse gases. Then the FAO said, this is way too much. We need to reduce the carbon footprint of livestock globally. By the way, the FAO also said that 80% of global livestock emissions are associated with developing countries, and 20% with developed countries and livestock. 80% developing countries, 20% developed countries. Then the FAO said, this is too much, we want to be here. So we want to drastically reduce emissions. And then they said, And there's a toolbox of solutions, because there's no one silver bullet. There's a toolbox of solutions that will get us to reduce emissions. And here's what they said that toolbox should include. And I will just, because the font is small, point out several. This one here shows productivity increases. The most important thing to reduce emissions is by being more efficient, ladies and gentlemen. Not news to you, right? But they are now saying it. A second one is better breeding, a huge topic in developing countries, better breeding. Another one is improved health care. And you can see there are many other tools. The one thing the FAO said is not very effective in reducing emissions from the livestock sector is the fourth column, changing what we eat. Dietary choices away from animal-sourced food toward plant-based food, the FAO say, is not the most effective, but the second least effective way in reducing the carbon footprint of animal-sourced foods. And I really want you to take that in, because the media reported exactly the opposite. They said this report would tell all of us to stop eating meat, dairy, and eggs. The opposite is true. And that's important for you to know. So, the CLEAR Center does a lot of not just research, but equally important communications. And I really want to emphasize that. Do good things and talk about them is what we live and breathe. Here are some examples of what we have done developing explainers on topics people are interested in. We are speaking in words, in language that people, our target audiences, understand. Who's the world's worst communicator, you think? Professors. They're the worst. And take that from one who is one himself. They're the worst communicators. But I can tell you, we are taking it at heart to know who our audiences are and target our audiences, okay? We will not do communication that is above and beyond people's heads, but we are very, very targeted in how we communicate. These are some examples here. I encourage you to check them out by going to this URL. We are also particularly interested in making our communication visual, because that's what many 20-year-olds want to see. High school students, college students, they don't read the newspaper anymore. They want to go do a Google search on a topic they're interested in, and or go to YouTube and watch a video on a certain topic. And we have done many of those, and we will do more, particularly aimed at the pork industry, because the vast majority of the public does not really have a clue how we raise pigs. Even though there has been a lot of effort, it's still not there. And I know that because I teach 400 undergraduate students in animal science, and I would think that they are very educated kids, and they are, but what they know about food production is dismal, and that's shocking to me. The amount of knowledge that young people have about where their food comes from is dismal. We are failing them in our educational system with respect to training on where their food comes from, how it's grown, what the impacts are on our health, what the impacts are on finances, what the impacts are on the environment, and so on. And we are filling that void. What you are doing with your We Care and what we are doing at CLEAR is filling a void that the educational system is leaving behind. So now we are doing, for example, videos, and one of them I want to share with you. And that is a video that we did not too long ago. Here is a scan me thing. You are what do you call that? A QR code. Take a photo of that, and then it gets you to our most recent videos, and I'm very proud of those because they are short, 8 minutes, but they give us a really good idea of what pork production looks like in Minnesota or wherever, in North Carolina or Iowa or Hawaii. These videos are not made for you. They're not made for you to depict efficiency gains and so on. They are made for a public and to get them interested in what pork production looks like and how it can be very different throughout different parts of the country. And we were able to get pork producers that put out a hook that is absolutely amazing. I love it. And this is one video that we want to share with you here in a second that shows that. Social media is where we are all the time. Tracy is here, and Ashley is here. We are doing all kinds of whatever, YouTubes and explainers and so on. And we analyze the effectiveness. We reach hundreds of thousands of people routinely. And what we find even more important than the statistics as to how many impressions we have is to see the comments people leave behind. Here are a couple of those. They are worth more than gold, because people tell us, here's what we think about the way you communicate. We are not some PR agency. We are not doing marketing. We are doing fact-based communication about topics that people are interested in. And we are very much encouraged by seeing the feedback that we get. So, anybody know this gentleman? Is he here? Okay. So, the Sprung story, and let's see it, a video of it. Do we get a sound?
It's a passion for agriculture. It's a passion for what I do. I don't have an occupation. My life is what I do, and that's this farm. I think one of the key things that a lot of us don't realize is how blessed we are with the resources that we have. When I say resources, I'm saying the climate, the land, the environment that we have here, and the ability to take those and manage those for the benefit not only of my family, but also then for society. We're managing that day to day. It's not from some C-suite in a foreign country. It is, right here on the farm. We want to make sure that it has that generational aspect. I think my father and grandfather had that same, where they taught me that stewardship.
My very first memory, as best I can tell, is sitting in a feed cart full of sow feed, feeding sows in the farrowing house that's right behind us, that's been converted to a nursery. I can also remember wanting my pants to be as dirty as my dad's and the rest of the guys on the yard, so I'd pick up gravel and rub it on my jeans.
Minnesota is the second largest pork producing state, and here all of our farms are family farms, from small, medium to large. And so I think that direct connection to the communities where they farm, when you think about sustainability, they really put themselves into that position and making sure that they're doing the right things, not just now for creating opportunities for their businesses, which is what pig farms are, but also being good neighbors and being good stewards of the land and the resources they use.
My dad never had a containment for manure. It was just outside. And so we wanted to contain those nutrients, keep it in an engineered contained pit that it can't go anywhere until I put it there. We use science to be able to tell us how many gallons of manure put on there, so that we kind of know how many bushels of corn that we can raise, but also then that phosphorus and potassium is coming along with it, which are nutrients that are needed to raise that crop. We'll actually then follow up on variable rate spread, where we'll put additional phosphorus or additional potassium only if needed to be able to grow that crop.
Swine farmers make sure that they're protecting the environment, that they're holding the welfare of the animals at highest regard, one of the most important assets a farm has. And they're doing that not just by improving housing, but also manure management. These are constantly improved and adjusted in a way where we now know what kind of nutrients are contained in manure, so that the manure go from the animal to the crop without affecting in any negative way the environment.
The reason we build a facility like this, we're standing on a slatted floor. So when these pigs urinate or defecate, their manure will go directly through the floor and into an 8-foot deep sealed concrete pit. The manure that's underneath this floor isn't a waste product to me, it's a valuable resource. The feed that we give these pigs is grown right here in southwest Minnesota. So the manure that I put in this pit doesn't go anywhere until I want it to go somewhere. We core sample this pit, send it to a wet chemistry lab to analyze for nitrogen content, phosphorus content, potassium content, and some micronutrients as well. Then we grid sample the field, and we apply the exact right amount of manure to the exact right acre of the field to raise corn and soybeans for next year's crop and for the feed that we're gonna make.
actually going through a major change here. We're going to a strip till practice here where we're leaving that 20 inches untilled in between here. And if there's a piece of that 2.5 acres that doesn't need nitrogen, we don't put it on there. If there's a piece that doesn't need phosphorus, we don't. We are as efficient as we can with those nutrients on how we grow that next crop here. And I'm not just telling you, I can prove it to you.
Farmers take great pride into optimizing the conditions of their farm and then proudly handing it over at some point to the next generation. That's a very inherent part of farming and one that I'm also very proud of.
When I think about the Spronk family, I really care about their community, really care about the people that come alongside them in their business. That openness to what they're willing to try and do in the name of constant improvement is really rewarding. That's a common theme you'll see in pig farmers in the Midwest is, like I said, their name's on the door and that matters. And so they put their whole selves into trying new things, constantly improving and doing the right things for pigs, people, and the planet.
I say it often, most of the time with a smirk on my face. I hope to be raising pigs for the rest of my life unless I mess it up. I do truly mean that, right? Every day when I'm making a decision, it's the goal to keep this farm moving for decades and decades, generations and generations.
You know, whether you're a beef farmer, a dairy farmer, a pig farmer, a crop farmer, it is that generational part of it here. In other words, where that knowledge and passion from one generation to the next is passed on. It is everyday lessons that are given to that next generation. I still got some opportunity to instill more into Seth. I don't know that he needs it anymore because he's exceeded me in what, how should I say, he needs to do or what he wants to do. But no, as long as I can live and breathe, I'll be part of it.
To having made these experiences of meeting people like him and others and sharing those stories, I think it's very, very important. Always remember, do good things and talk about them. So last not least, if you go to clear.ucdavis.edu, you'll find a lot of tools that you can use. Explainers, short explainers that explain issues that the public might ask you. You will find them on the Clear Center webpage, but you also find them if you just Google certain topics popping up. Explainers, blogs, news stories, YouTube videos, and so on. We are reaching hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions of people on topics they normally wouldn't hear from us, but from some activists. We are changing the tides. And we are doing that in partnership with you, and we are proud of doing it in partnership with you. So thank you very much for your attention. I'm looking forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mittlerner. Really appreciate you sharing the work at the Clear Center, as well as some of those great stories. And in that video, you'll get to see a little bit of an introduction to our next speaker. Next is Lauren Servick with Minnesota Pork Board.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here and appreciate the Pork Board's opportunity to talk to you a little bit about taking this context down to a state level and a wonderful introduction in this wonderful Sprong video that we shot last fall. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how, to me, and I really think what Dr. McLaren just shared is really important in that stewardship, sustainability, freedom to operate. We're all talking about the same thing. And whatever word we have to use to connect with our audience, we can do that. But I want to highlight a little bit about some of that context and what this can really mean and look like when it all comes together. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the strategic plan that we have at Minnesota Pork and how freedom to operate is a core pillar of that and how we're going about it. And not just how we're doing it, but why we're doing it. There's a number of increasing pressures and questions being asked about how farmers do what they do and why they do what they do. And how having information and resources can really help ensure that not only are we holding the line right now, but that next generation has an opportunity to come into this very noble profession. And so I'm going to start with the core pillar in Minnesota Pork. We have 5 pillars in our strategic plan. Freedom to operate is one of them, so feel free to read along with me. Minnesota Pork will proactively engage to protect our freedom to operate, enabling farmers to produce a safe, nutritious protein. We will focus on the impact of policy and regulatory changes, prioritize industry profitability for all farms, drive effort to promote social, environmental, and economical sustainability to ensure opportunities for future generations. So to me, this is what freedom to operate is all about. We have to do the things now, so ensuring that there are opportunities in the future, and that means different things. It is that social, environmental, and economical sustainability. In that video, you hear me mention pig farms are businesses, and that's really relevant. We can't lose sight of that. But that also means we have to do the right thing by the animal and our communities and the environment. And so by doing that, which if you're familiar with We Care again, I just kind of named 5 of the 6 principles to you. We have to really tell that story, and there's a lot of reasons why, and I'll paint a picture of what it's like in Minnesota and why this is in our strategic plan as an organization. And so we operate in a pretty stringent regulatory environment already, the farmers in Minnesota. We're the 2nd largest producing state and arguably one of the more regulated as well. Everything from what happens inside the barn to outside of the barn to manure application is regulated in Minnesota. And some of it even more than our crop production partners. Manure is more restricted than commercial fertilizer in the state of Minnesota, and I think a lot of us would argue there's a lot of good that comes from manure that we can be excited about, from building sustainability, building soil health, protecting water quality, and at the same time it's much more regulated. And so there are a lot of attributes to Minnesota that make it a little bit challenging to continue farming, and so holding the line on these things is going to be really important. And I'll give you a key example of how information and resources made available both by the National Pork Board and what we do at a state is really trying to change the tides of these. And I'll start with kind of our primary need for primary data. So through the We Care Farm impact reports and a lot of other resources that the Pork Board has done around greenhouse gases, much from the Clear Center as well, we have a better understanding of the fluxes of greenhouse gases when it relates to swine production. However, in the state of Minnesota, every 2 years, there is a greenhouse gas inventory done in the state based by sector. So things like transportation, housing, heavy industrial, electric generation, and agriculture are part of this. So in 2021, we learned that the report that was going to come out in 22, agriculture in Minnesota was going to become the number 2 sector for greenhouse gas contributions in the state, moving from number 3 to number 2. What we also learned as part of that was in that report, agriculture was given 0 credit for storing carbon. And if you'll remember, of all the industries that can store carbon, forestry and agriculture are the 2. And so we felt that that was not an accurate depiction of agriculture for sure. But I had to have information and resources as my role as the Director of Policy and Sustainability to take into those conversations and help change the notion that agriculture was only adding greenhouse gases, not taking them out. And so I would like to tell you that we're making good progress on this. They are working on ways to better measure and more accurately measure the greenhouse gas fluxes from agriculture in Minnesota. We're not there yet. It's been about the 4-year process since then. But with the on-farm reports that the National Pork Board has been investing in, I was able to take that into that meeting with concrete evidence to prove that the way that report was put together was not accurate and not fairly depicting agriculture. And that's just one small example of that need for data that we all know and understand that we are doing the right thing for the environment. We just need to be able to prove it. So one of the other ways that's kind of changing is, I told you we were already heavily regulated, and that pressure is not going away. In Minnesota, we saw about 2 years ago a petition related to nitrates in groundwater in southeast Minnesota. Our NPDES, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permits were up for renewal, and we saw that plug into the permit renewal and some of the new requirements being asked of farmers to implement as part of their permits. We also saw a lawsuit against our state agencies saying that our water protection rules are not adequate enough, regulating commercial fertilizer and manure. And recently, just this spring, our entire state's feedlot rules, so regardless of size, our 70-20 is what that is up for rule review. And it's the first time in 20 years that that's happening. And I think all of these things are compounding. And if you talk about all these headwinds coming at us, this all happened since May of 2023. And these are big, monumental shifts in the state of Minnesota when it comes to agriculture. And so making sure we have information that is very accurate and depicts exactly what farmers in Minnesota are doing to take into these conversations is going to be pivotal and will truly be the difference in ensuring that there is opportunity for that next generation of pig farmer. And I think that's one of the really unique things about having an organization like the National Checkoff, like a state partner, and at times even our partners at MPPC, where funding and expertise can really come together with the right kinds of resources to move forward. And we have a couple different projects going on in Minnesota. I mentioned we have challenges in greenhouse gases and water quality. Taking the expertise at the National Pork Board, a really valuable resource like the on-farm reports, having farmers that are willing to stand up and speak up about what they're doing is really important. And when you put those together, I always joke with people, the on-farm report makes me really hard to argue with because I can tell you the good story of the farmer and I can show it to you. And that collaboration and that connection is really important. And I think as a state that sometimes is out front on some regulatory things, it starts here and it goes other places, making sure that we are really intentional about engaging now will ensure that those of my partners in other states also have that opportunity to, when that challenge comes, they're ready and they're prepared with the right information. One thing I want to quickly mention, and this is one to Dr. Miller did a really good pep talk. I wanted to run through the wall of sustainability with you. And I really do want to give you some kudos. And so I've been with Minnesota Pork for about 8 years and came from the soybean organizations and then my family dairy farms. And I want to talk to you quickly about the leadership that you all demonstrate that I think is a little bit different. And I think the belief in the leadership that you all show is really important. Similar to Paul, I was on the sustainability goal setting work group for the National Pork Board as a state partner representative. And a lot of thought and work and long meetings happened to come up with those We Care sustainability goals. And I think that's really important because there were a lot of farmers engaged, and that makes it relevant. Because I think we've seen a lot of industries and businesses move forward with goals that are quite aspirational and they don't have a lot of plan about how they're going to get there. And that was absolutely not the approach that was taken by pig farmers. Everything was measured. We looked at so many different scenarios about what can we achieve, how are we going to do it, and is it reasonable, and is it relevant? And so I think that industry relevance is super important. We are driving these because these goals came from pig farmers, and I think that's really important. The other thing that I'll point to, though, is, again, that leadership amongst peers. I think it was in those meetings we had discussions about what folks in the beef and dairy and poultry sectors were doing around their goals. And I think, again, we set something really realistic, really specific, with the ideas that we would need to move in order to start from where our benchmark was to where we wanted to go and measure it along the way. And I think that argument, and we didn't have the flashiest goal. We weren't net zero by 2050. That wasn't the goal. Instead, we said, this is the year we're starting from. These are the practices we're going to have to use to get there. And over time, is it business as usual? Absolutely not. It was going to take some effort and investment of time and resources. But I think that's also the nature of the pig farmer when it comes to freedom to operate. Continuous improvement was always the goal. And in Minnesota, we were one of the initial pilot states for the on-farm reports. And so I remember seeing the slide. It's used often if you've been in presentations about the greenhouse or the carbon footprint of pork production. And you'll know about 65% of it comes from feed production. So I knew that if we wanted to reach the goals that had been set by the National Pork Board and along with Minnesota Pork, our corn and soybean friends were going to have to come along with us. And I'm not above dragging them along with us. And so I took our report to the Minnesota Corn Board, along with, at the time it was Dr. Kaysen and then our CEO Dave Preisler at the time, to show them, hey, this is what the pork industry is doing. I recognize we're a step closer to the consumer than the average corn and soybean farmer in Minnesota, but this is what we're trying to do. And it would be really good if you came along with us. And now the entire Minnesota Corn Board has an on-farm report. And I think when you and soybean is coming along this year now too. So now we have about 85 farms in Minnesota participating in our pork report. Corn and soy also have theirs. And now all three parts of agriculture are coming together to all those challenges I mentioned from our regulatory environment. It's theirs too. And so having that information and that resource is going to be so important, not just for the pig farmer, but that corn and soybean, our contract growers, and our rural communities that come alongside production agriculture. So really appreciate the opportunity to share with all of you today. Thank you.